All right, thanks to the folks who are just joining us. I'm going to give it one more quick minute here and allow a few more folks to hop on. All right, thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. This is Fowler GC's Secret to Construction Team Success. Today's webinar is being presented by Megan Pratt, our 360 Sync Product Marketing Manager, and we are very grateful to be joined by Melinda McInturf, Fowler General Contractor's Implementation Process and Project Engineering Manager. Now, as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and we will forward the recording to all registrants. You can also find all of our webinar recordings on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, please submit them using the Q&A function in your Zoom toolbar. And if we have time at the end, we'll go through your questions. And I'll pass it over to Megan to take us away.
Perfect. Thank you, Marina. And thank you for joining us, Melinda. We're really excited to have you here. I would love it if we could start off with you just giving us a little bit of an introduction to who you are, your role, and we can kind of take it from there.
Okay. I am our implementation processes manager, and I manage our team of project engineers. That role has kind of evolved over the years because I started off as a receptionist for the company, and as we grow, roles and responsibilities have just kind of changed and naturally moved to this course here. So, and I work a lot with Procore, which was one of the reasons we ended up working with 360.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Yeah, I'm excited to dig into that a little bit more. So in line with that, tell me a little bit more about what your day-to-day looked like before you started working with 360 and how that kind of evolved.
Before 360, we were new with Procore. Before Procore, we were doing all of our RFIs and submittals through email, tracking through Excel sheets. Once we took on Procore and we had those tools to meet the needs of our field teams, we were growing at a pretty quick rate with our in-office and then our number of projects. So we were needing to come up with a system where documentation that we were receiving in office was getting to the field in a consistent manner. So at the time with Procore, you drag and drop to Procore, but there was no consistency between teams. And there was a lot of growing pains with our company as we were getting bigger at that time.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you talked a little bit about like the consistency between teams and timeliness as well, wanting teams to be able to access files in a timely manner. Maybe you'd talk a little bit more about that and how that kind of impacted you and your team at the time.
We were getting feedback that was frustration from our field teams. We have several scopes of work that we self-perform. And so those teams that jump from project to project, they're trying to find documentation. Well, it's saved here in one place for one project, and they now can't find it when they go to the other project. So that was the inconsistencies. The documentation was probably there in Procore, or maybe your project engineer or other team member was behind in uploading it to Procore. But that was one of the main frustrations for our field teams that we were hitting at the time. And so 360 was something that integrated with Procore and sounded like it would fit our needs. So we decided to give that a try.
Nice. Yeah, and I think that's a common story that most people on the webinar today can kind of empathize with, the inconsistencies, the calls, like I can't find this file, where is it? Kind of the general panic that can happen sometimes in those cases. So you talked about using Procore and those inconsistencies being the thing that caused you to look for a solution like 360 Sync. Were there other kind of solutions that came to the table at that time that you were as you were kind of looking for a way to fix these inconsistencies and, maybe spend your time in different places other than fielding these panicked calls?
I don't know if I'm going to answer this quite right, but
There's no right.
we didn't really have set procedures just because we had taken on so many new employees to meet our project needs, that we were having to create these processes. We grew from a team of 3 project engineers to 8 in less than a year. And so you have these really green employees that don't necessarily know the company ways, right? Whereas the 3 originals, they knew it like the back of their hand, and it was kind of innate knowledge, right? So we were having to create procedures, and that's when we found all these open gaps, right? And trying to look from the outside in, so that we understood where those gaps were and then address those one by one. And it seemed like 360 Sync resolved a lot of those gaps for us. And we're talking clear up to even the safety team that was growing as well. So when you have L&I come on site and surprise you, you need to be able to present all this documentation. Well, it used to be in a binder. Who knows where the binder goes after it gets signed off at the beginning of the project, right? This way we can make sure that not only our self-performing teams have a consistent location for where their documentation is saved, but our safety teams also have that ease of mind, because they know that the safety documents that are required are easily accessible and always in the same place as well.
That makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like this expansion and like your pretty fast growth played a huge role in highlighting some of these gaps. And then you were able to say like, oh, wow, yeah, we actually do need a solution for this. I guess this manual way isn't going to work into the future. And then, I think those, sometimes it does just take a few people to come in and say like, oh, is this the way that we're doing it, for you to find a better solution?
Yeah. I mean, Excel tracking can work for 1 or 2 projects, and within a certain price range, right? But you get beyond a certain size of project or beyond 2 or 3 team members, there's no way that you can stay on top of it.
Yeah, that's a great point around size of projects, types of projects, amount of teammates. Like once you get past a few, it really does get to be, it balloons, right? It's an exponential kind of growth in the amount of documents you're handling.
It is exponential. And we didn't really understand like the return of investment on this when we got 360. We didn't know if there was going to be any way that we could get some hard numbers on that. But we did get a quarterly update that showed tool usage. And it turned out that our syncs that were happening on our behalf, that you have mapped ahead of time, that are working behind the scenes, no employees having to put hours to this being done, right? Well, other than me setting it up at the beginning of the project, but showed that that tool was uploading 53 times as many documents as the next highest user in Procore for the documents tool. So that right there just shows you hours saved and clicks being saved, which is something that we're trying to do, is like minimize clicks, make processes more efficient. And that's what 360 does for us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And maybe we can get a little bit, that's a good segue into maybe a little bit more of the nitty gritty of like, how specifically are you minimizing those clicks? What specifically are kind of maybe the top things that this takes off your plate?
We have any kind of documentation that the field is going to need. We have a template that I create or map for every new project. And based on the project needs, sometimes those mappings look a little bit differently, which is part of our team initiation meeting, our kickoff meeting that we have. And it's known from the beginning what documentation will be saved and where it will be saved to, even though we have a template that we go by. This allows our project engineers and our project managers, if they're in office, when they save something to our drive, they no longer have to remember where else do I need to save this to. It does it for them. And while we only use Procore to have it synced to, I know that they work with other applications. And so you can have it synced to multiple different locations, but without actually having to think about that and try to remember that those extra steps and those extra processes. So it simplifies that, takes one less thing off your plate.
Yeah, which matters a lot. So it sounds like your team uploads files to your drive, and then this takes it from your drive to Procore in the exact right place so that, you know, your team, your safety team, you mentioned specifically, has one-stop shop. They know where to go. Your teams in the field have a one-stop shop. They know where to go to find their documents or upload the documents. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Great. So I think specifically for your day-to-day, you mentioned that this has cut down your time. Your clicks is kind of how you put it. And it sounds like that's a huge priority for your organization, cutting down the clicks and by proxy, making sure your processes are streamlined, like you said. How would you say, like, what else are you doing with that time? How are you able to kind of like up level your day-to-day because you're not just, you know, clicking around and saving multiple files?
Well, so I am no longer, I was one of the senior project engineers. And now that we have these automated processes, it was a natural step move up to implementation processes manager. So I am writing procedures, trainings for the project engineers as well as the project managers through, typically it's Procore updates, and then in-house procedure changes. But it has allowed us to develop more positions within the company because we are growing, and I don't have to do as much project engineer specific tasks.
Yeah. So I think what I hear from a lot of organizations is, you know, you're talking a lot about this quick growth that you experienced. A lot of the time there tends to be kind of like a plateau point because your old processes can't keep up with all of these new people, but it seems like you were able to get over a lot of that kind of plateau, at least in terms of your processes and your paperwork and things like that, because you were able to automate a lot of that, which in turn made it so you could grow sustainably and more quickly. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, that is, because we see plateauing happening in a couple other departments or areas of our projects. And so we are looking for solutions for that as well. And we, again, work with Procore because of all the integrations that they have. And that was one of the nice things about 360 Sync was its integration capabilities, and how we see that's going to help us move forward in other integrations that we know we're going to be taking on in the future. So,
right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I think if you were talking to someone in your position of thinking about someone who is experiencing this quick growth within their organization, is maybe looking down the road and seeing, I don't know how much longer we can sustain this. What are some tips and tricks or best practices or red flags that you would raise for those folks?
the plateau was a good one, even though it was easier seeing hindsight sometimes. But finding something that's versatile and isn't gonna corner you into something or limit your capabilities. 360 has a lot of integrating capabilities, and they're continuing to grow how they map and automate, which we're still working out the kinks in that. But we are, I want to say, 2 years into using 360 Sync, and they've improved quite a bit over that time. So try not to corner yourself into or limit your capabilities with any kind of integrations that you take on. So that's definitely something that we consider. And then we typically make sure that it works with Procore, because that's our base for project management, and then it has to integrate with our accounting. So.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So thinking about those integrations between your platforms, which to your point, isn't something that someone would think about ahead of time. It's like, okay, does this fit this need? Great, let's purchase it. But looking beyond that and thinking about how is our stack going to connect together, it seems like was an important part of your process.
Yeah, it has to be able to work with not just your field teams and your office teams, but then your different departments. So this covered all of our different kinds of projects. It was useful for that, as well as getting into HR and safety and accounting, all of it.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. If you had a quick description of 360 Sync and what it does for you, how would you describe it in your own words?
Automated mapping from one system to another.
Perfect. Quick, simple, and easy. I love it. Perfect. Marina, do we have any questions coming in the chat that we'd like to answer?
Yeah, I do have a couple here. Firstly, how responsive is the support team? Melinda, so maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your experience working with the 360 Sync team.
We are on first name basis. Yeah, sometimes the coding can give some problems. Our experience is our IT is pretty robust, and so those are the problems that we're having is IT restrictions. When we want to map from here to there, and IT is like, no, you're not allowed in there, but that's where the system's saved, and so you got to work around that. But once you get that dialed in, the 360 Sync works really smoothly, and their team is responsive. The coding can sometimes take a little bit to get resolved, but they are responsive. Yes.
That's great. And this question kind of goes hand in hand with this other one. Did you receive training or assistance as part of the implementation process?
Yeah, they did step by step. So we did an online conference call, shared screens. You'd hit an error, they were seeing it live and were able to walk you through that or give you tips and tricks. And we're still doing that process now because so when we implemented this, they were scheduled syncs, and now that's turning into something that is more immediate. And so they just recently rolled out the ability to sync from Windows to other platforms. And we're still working out the kinks with that. Again, it's coding based on our IT restrictions. So.
That's great. Can you describe any creative ways that you've integrated 360 Sync with your organization? So whether that be, I know you've mentioned Procore, and is there any way that it has helped you reach people out in the field, perhaps?
Yeah, our field definitely gets a benefit from this, and that was one of the major points in taking it on. Because before that, we did have Bluebeam Studio, which was working okay, but we couldn't get our field teams access to our server while out in the field. There were issues with Wi-Fi connecting and just server access in general. It was difficult and cumbersome at best. So while you're still going to have Wi-Fi restrictions or problems when you are out in the field, that's a lot easier to resolve than network access. For some reason, it just wasn't an easy solution for network access. Even though the capability is out there, our IT department was always having to fix problems with people not being able to access the server, right? So now if you just have consistent internet out like at the job trailer, even if you can't cover the entire site, you at least know that you can get into Procore, the app, because everybody has a smart device nowadays, and documentation is going to be synced there.
That's fantastic. Thanks. And Megan, here's a question. Maybe you can help touch on this one as well. Someone from the audience has asked, do you get notifications when new items are uploaded and synced?
Melinda.
Depends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mapping, you can get whoever schedules the mapping, who's created the mapping, is have it turned on for an email notification, and you get notified if it has worked or has not worked. But as far as new items being uploaded to a specific location, Procore is designated where you can track folders and you can get a notice when new items are dropped in there. So when that sync would complete, you could have it set so that it notifies you of new documentation saved there. Other platforms, I'm going to guess that they have capabilities like that, but we don't use them.
Hey, great. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Great. Melinda, anything we didn't touch on that you want to mention before we kind of wrap ourselves up here?
No, I think that actually covered all of my things.
Love it. Perfect. We so appreciate your time, and we appreciate everybody who attended today. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. Marina, I will pass it back over to you for exit instructions.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. And of course, Melinda over at Fowler GC. We really appreciate you joining us today. And to all of our attendees, I hope that you found the information valuable. Please make sure to follow Evolve on social media to keep up with all things related to 360 Sync. You can also find more demos and past webinars on the Evolve YouTube channel. And as a final reminder, this webinar has been recorded and we will send out the recording in an email to all registrants. Thanks again and have a great day, everyone.